Duterte keeps his focus on the fight against terrorism. The territorial dispute was also on the summit's agenda, this as China plans to set up an air identification zone in the South China Sea. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says that goes against international law. COVID-19 cases in the Philippines once again climbed beyond 1,000 in a single day. Total infections have now surpassed 34,000. COVID hotspot Cebu City remains in the center of that surge as authorities are warning that their healthcare system is nearing critical level. In its final, the bodies of more than 300 OFWs, some of whom died due to COVID-19, will be flown back to the country next week. And despite authorities putting the blame on Filipinos for the rise in cases due to supposed disobedience and lack of discipline, Google data shows most Filipinos did their part, opting to stay home. We begin tonight with a first as Southeast Asian leaders convened for the 36th Asean Summit online. While talks centered on the regional bloc's response to COVID-19, President Duterte brought attention to what he says is another threat: terrorism. Maricel Halili with the story.
For the first time in history, heads of states of Southeast Asian nations met virtually for the ASEAN Leaders Summit on Friday morning as the region continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. The leaders had to forego the traditional handshakes and family photos. The regional bloc decided to create the ASEAN COVID-19 Response Fund, with member countries committing to look for ways to collect funds in the fight against the virus. President Rodrigo Duterte, who was supposed to be in Vietnam for the summit, delivered his online address at his residence in Malago. In his speech, Duterte emphasized the need to maximize trade participation among ASEAN countries. This is not only to ensure steady supply amid the pandemic, but also to push for faster economic recoveries.
To survive, we need to make fundamental and systematic changes. And only a cohesive and responsive ASEAN can help us safely navigate out of this perfect storm of crisis.
The president added that the Philippine government must focus on giving assistance to ordinary workers and micro, small, and medium enterprises. And amid the bad effects of the crisis, the president highlighted some silver lining, including the decline in pollution and the boom in e-commerce and artificial intelligence.
This pandemic has taught us that we must choose to be the nature's steward, not its abuses. Lockdowns have also forced us to take full responsibility of technology and innovation. The adoption of e-commerce, e-learning, video conferencing, and the artificial intelligence have all accelerated by the crisis.
The issue and territorial dispute was also discussed. In his press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the president reminded the different claimants to the South China Sea to avoid tension by adhering to the rule of law. And like other heads of state, Roque said Duterte supports the early passage of the Code of Conduct. The president also took time to once again talk about terrorism.
The pandemic has not killed terrorism. It remains alive, lurking in the shadows, and in some countries, terrorist elements strike even during government relief operations. At a time of great need, these acts are unconscionable, and we must therefore be always on the alert.
During the summit, at least 2 heads of state have recommended the reopening of borders of ASEAN nations to allow business travels, subject to restrictions, but the rest of ASEAN leaders have yet to decide on the matter. For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
Ahead of ASEAN's online summit, China has been reportedly planning to establish an Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ, in the South China Sea. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says that would violate international law. As per Lorenzana, the vast sea has always been a global commons open for navigation and fishing. He also pointed out that Beijing's plan would violate sovereign rights of coastal states over their exclusive economic zones. On Wednesday, a ranking United States military official warned that a Chinese ADIZ in South China Sea would not only affect the United States, but all nations in the region. In other stories, at least 20 people were arrested in Manila after staging a protest against the anti-terror bill. The supposed Pride March was organized by LGBTQ plus group Bahaghari, which says they did not violate any law. They added that social distancing was observed during the protest. Meanwhile, rights group Karapatan said the 20 were not informed of any charges when they were accosted. However, the Manila Police District says the protest was against community quarantine protocols.
Hanggang ngayon po wala pa rin pong sinasabi sa amin kung ano po talaga yung nilabag namin. Kasi malinaw naman po, kuha naman po ng media kanina na wala pong mga violations na na-incur ang aming programa.
Ang unang violation nito yung tinatawag natin na illegal assembly, no? Kasi nung tinignan nila, wala namang permit. At ngayon ay nasa ilalim tayo ng tinatawag na community quarantine. Community quarantine na kung saan ay ipinagbabawal pa rin yung ating mga mass gathering.
The UN Human Rights Commission is reiterating its call for an independent and on-the-ground probe into human rights violations in the country. They called on the Human Rights Council to strengthen the mandate of the UN Rights Office to continue monitoring the situation in the Philippines. This after the UN office confirmed that there are systemic killings in the government's war on drugs. By the end of June, UN Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet is expected to present a report on the country's human rights situation. More than 100 areas in the country have been placed under localized lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The move was made to contain the spread of the virus at the community levels. Of those areas, around 60 places are within the Cordillera Administrative Region, 18 are in the NCR, 19 in Cebu City, 5 in Cagayan de Oro, and 1 each in Cavite, Quezon, and Leyte. The DILG says local governments must declare a lockdown in streets or barangays once a clustering of cases are recorded. The government is still working on assisting locally stranded individuals, but not all of these stranded people will get to go home this weekend. Those bound for Eastern Visayas would have to wait some more. Just how long? Patricia Mangunit tells us in this report.
After 3 months of being stranded in Metro Manila, Ronald Rada, who lost his job as a construction worker due to the pandemic, wants to fly back to his hometown in Samar. But he has to wait for 14 days before being allowed to go back home.
Okay lang po sana yun para at least kahit paano po makauwi ako doon sa tatay ko, sa bahay ng tatay ko para po may matulugan ako ng maayos-ayos dahil dito po sa Maynila, sa kalsada na lang po ako natutulog, sa bangketa.
Regis Arturio, who is also from Samar, experienced the same fate. He has just completed all documents required, including a travel authority and a medical certificate. But he says he is willing to wait until they are free to go home.
Okay lang ma'am, walang problema basta meron po aming maayos na matutuluyan po eh. Tsaka his support sa pagkain, syempre kasi wala naman pinagkakitaan ngayon, wala kaming trabaho.
The Interior Department said they are just heeding the call of local officials in Eastern Visayas, particularly in Leyte and Samar, to temporarily hold off the travel of locally stranded individuals back to their provinces. This is while quarantine facilities in the region are still being decongested to accommodate additional LSIs. The National Police has also stopped issuing travel authorities to LSIs bound for any part of the region. Only after 14 days or starting July 10 can LSIs be allowed to travel. The Philippine Army said they are fully capable of sustaining the basic needs of LSIs who will need to extend their stay at the Philippine Army Wellness Center or at the libingan ng mga bayani.
We provide them sleeping accommodations, food, and transportation to the airport.
Still, the Philippine Army welcomes donations from private organizations. Since June 12, the Philippine Army has already accommodated more than 1,000 stranded individuals and has so far sent off more than 750. For News 5, Patricia Mangune, we are One News.
In line with safety measures, the health department has also issued protocols for the locally stranded individuals before they are allowed to go home to their respective provinces. The stranded people must show no COVID-19 symptoms after going on quarantine for 2 weeks. They must also coordinate with their respective LGUs prior to being transported back home. The new protocols come after a reported rise in COVID-19 cases in the provinces, particularly in Eastern Visayas and Cebu. Some LGUs have claimed that most cases involve returning residents from Metro Manila. The DOH has also advised LGUs to strongly implement another 2-week quarantine period for the stranded people before they return to their homes.
It's not true na pupunta ka lang sa barangay, sasabihin mo lang na wala kang sakit at ikaw ay bibigyan na ng clearance.
We don't need that. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, for the second day this week, COVID-19 cases in the country jumped by more than 1,000, pushing total cases to more than 34,000. And the newly minted Cebu City anti-COVID SAR wants isolation facilities to be transferred outside communities as the city grapples with a surge in infections. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. COVID-19 cases in the Philippines have surpassed 34,000. This as the health department is saying more than 1,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported. More than 780 of those were fresh cases. More than 210 were late reported cases. 12 new COVID-19 fatalities were also recorded today. That pushes the death toll to more than 1,220. Meanwhile, total recoveries have breached the 9,000 mark with more than 200 recoveries reported today. Cases continue to surge in Cebu City. 61 out of its 80 barangays recorded new COVID-19 cases over the past 14 days. There is also a clustering of cases in 49 barangays. The agency is warning that the capacity of the healthcare system in Cebu City might reach critical levels soon, as hospitals are already overwhelmed with the influx of COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, the DOH says they are willing to support tuob or steam inhalation as long as it will not have any negative effects on COVID-19 patients. However, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere is warning that there is no scientific evidence that steam therapy can cure COVID-19.
But this time, because this tuob is naipalabas na namin dati pa na kapag ikaw ay nag-steam, kapag ikaw nag-misting, all of these things which aerosolize the virus, it may lead to further transmission of the disease.
COVID-19 response overseer Roy Simatu wants to relocate Cebu City's isolation facilities as some centers are, he says, too close to communities. To give us more details, we have Jem Avancenia reporting live. Jem, what other measures will be enforced in Cebu?
Governor Gwen Garcia hits back at the Philippine Medical Association after the group of doctors condemned her promotion or endorsement of tuob or steam inhalation to her constituents. Explaining via Facebook Live, Governor Garcia said she advocates tuob not as a cure but as a preventive measure against COVID-19. She even asked the PMA to conduct further research on tuob. But while the province chief is making a case for tuob in the city of Cebu, the local government is set on the strict implementation of quarantine guidelines. Attorney Ray Gialon, Cebu City Mayor spokesperson, warned that cases may be filed against individuals who will be arrested for violating quarantine restrictions. He also expounded the guidelines for the new quarantine passes, which includes the number coding system, QR codes, and barangay clustering. Meanwhile, in Manila, after his two-day visit in Cebu City, Environment Secretary Roy Simato said he is now ready to report his observations and recommendations to curb the spread of virus in the city to the Interagency Task Force. On top of the list, placing isolation sites outside communities, as setting up facilities in barangays will only lead to the virus quickly spreading. Another problem cited by the Cebu City Anti-COVID Czar is the discrepancy in COVID-19 data between the health department and the local government. Simato said he will request the task force to send a team to Cebu City to help address the problem. He will also ask for additional medical staff from the region to help in rotational duty in hospitals. Robbie, the Cebu City Health Department recorded 95 new cases of COVID-19 today, bringing the total of COVID-19 cases in Cebu City to 4,702. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Jem Avancenia. And these are the other big stories today. Action star and former Senator Ramon Revilla Sr. has passed away. He was 93. His son, Senator Bong Revilla, confirmed the news in a Facebook video this afternoon. No details were released yet as to the cause of the former senator's death. Courier company J&T Express says they are considering taking legal action following public backlash over a viral video of their delivery staff mishandling packages. The company called the circulating videos malicious as it compromises, they said, the welfare of their employees. The statement, which appeared to have been deleted from their Facebook account, urged the public to practice freedom of speech responsibly. Bureau of Immigration records have shown that former Wirecard Chief Operating Officer Jan Marsalic flew into the country and left for China earlier this week. Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara, however, said there is no CCTV footage showing him arriving in the country. The Bureau will now be investigating its Management Information System Office to determine whether there was collusion. And with 2 months left before the start of a new academic year, most teachers have yet to be trained for online or distance learning. But the Education Department insists there's nothing to worry about. Dale De Vera tells us more.
One laptop might have to service 2 classes this coming school year. Benji is not keen on buying a new one due to budget constraints. For now, his school principal allows handwritten modules.
As teacher, lagi naman kaming handa eh. So marami namang ibang paraan. So nagagawa naman ng paraan ng school, ng principals, din ng mga co-teachers. So tulong-tulong naman kami lagi. So kung sa pagiging ready naman. Pero yung preparado siguro baka medyo para magkaiba ho kasi yun eh.
The Education Department is confident they are ready for the coming school year. Education Undersecretary Jess Mateo says a study on teachers' preparedness for blended learning show that majority are all set for the next academic year. Mateo explains that school year 2020-2021 will not go full online, meaning gadgets may not be needed for both teachers and students. He adds that 3 modalities will be available: printed modules, online learning, and TV and radio placement instruction.
Doon sa readiness ng teacher na nag-survey kami ng mahigit kumulang mga almost 800 mga respondents, sabi nila 87% may computer eh. Of the 87%, meron doon na internet connection, about 49%. So doon pa lang makikita natin na hindi lahat talaga may kakayahan na online.
Mateo says as of June 26, around 14.6 million or 52% of students from last year have been enrolled in the coming academic year. Of this, 14 million will be in public schools, while around 577,000 enrollees will be in private schools. But Mateo remains hopeful that more parents will still enroll their students for continued learning. For News 5, Dale De Vera, we are One News.
Coming up on the big story, the Foreign Affairs Department has a huge task before it, bringing home some 37,000 OFWs within the next 4 weeks. The details when we return. And the mobility of Filipinos during the lockdown. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. After some consideration on the matter, the government will now be getting ready to repatriate the remains of deceased OFWs from Saudi Arabia. But there's one more problem for authorities: the repatriation of thousands of OFWs. Ria Fernandez has the story.
The bodies of at least 300 overseas Filipino workers will be flown back to the Philippines next week. That's according to Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III. That move, said Bello, had to go through several discussions since the 301 OFWs died either of COVID-19 or other natural causes. Initially, he said the government did not want to repatriate the corpses to avoid possible transmission.
We were able to talk to Secretary Tugade to provide us with 2 cargo planes to bring home yung ating 301 dead OFWs. So by maybe middle of next week, we will fly. We will fly to KSA and then take our dead heroes and bring them back to our country.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, on the other hand, is targeting to repatriate at least 37,000 OFWs in the next 3 to 4 weeks. The bulk would be coming from the Middle East, but the DFA said the capacity to repatriate would depend on the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. Currently, chartered flights for repatriation only fly thrice a week, ferrying a maximum of 2,000 OFWs per day. CAAP said the DFA can formally request to make chartered flights daily, but continuous repatriation may also present a problem for the department.
If we continue repatriating aggressively, since we already have only 30 to 31% of the remaining 1 billion funds for the assistance to nationals, by the end of August or mid-August, we will not have funds for repatriation anymore. Chartered flight for the Middle East amounts to 12 to 13 million per flight with only 350 passengers.
The DFA proposes financial assistance for stranded OFWs as they await their return. Meanwhile, labor officials denied reports of OFW scavenging in the Middle East.
Naniniwala ba kayo na ang Pilipino, isang marangal at may dangal na tao, ay kakain ng basura? The truth of the matter, Your Honor, I was a witness of things like this. Sa mga groceries, sa Qatar, sa mga groceries in Riyadh, merong yung mga nagde-deliver na pagkain, may nagde-deliver ng prutas, na kapag ni-reject noong groceries, yun ang pinag-agawan ng mga kasamahan natin. Hindi po ito busura. Ito yung hindi pumapasa sa kategorya ng mga groceries. Hindi po basura. At hindi po ako naniniwala na may Pilipino kakain ng basura.
Bello also defended reports of overseas Filipinos resorting to selling blood to earn extra money. This, he said, has been a practice long before the pandemic. Philippine Ambassador to Saudi Arabia Adnan Alonto also warned OFWs to stop uploading videos that might expose them to possible cyber libel violations in Riyadh that, he said, may affect the process of repatriation. During his speech, House Speaker Alan Cayetano recognized the efforts of various government agencies to respond to OFWs affected by the health crisis. But he admits an integrated approach is a must to better address their needs. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
While some leaders have blamed a supposed lack of discipline among people for the rise of COVID-19 cases for being pasaway supposedly or hard-headed, Google data shows otherwise. Google mobility records show that movements outside of homes clearly plunged by 90%, while movements within residential households since the lockdown in March have seen an uptick of 43%. Google measured the movement trend of people based on mobile phones with their location history on. Mobility was likewise limited in Cebu City, also recorded by Google. The Bayanihan spirit continues after around 3.5 million pesos worth of donations were handed to the Alagang Kapatid Foundation. More than 8,000 hygiene kits and 33,000 face masks were donated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. These were distributed around Metro Manila and Zambales, and the Alagang Kapatid Foundation also plans to reach Marawi. The Latter-day Saints charity has been a partner of the Alagang Kapatid Foundation since 2012. A golden retriever in the United States is defying science for living 20 long years. That's 140 in dog years. This makes August, or Augie, the world's oldest golden retriever. Normally, dogs of this breed only live up to 12 years. But Augie just had her 20th birthday last April. Her fur parents attributes her good health to regular exercise, quality dog food, supplements, and veterinary care. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. You can register for a free account now at signalplay.com and then stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.
Happy weekend. Totoo na.
Meron ka na bang bagong IITF?